Joining us tonight is Andreas Park, a professor of finance at the University of Toronto. Professor Park, we heard from Freeland today the pressures coming from the White House on trade and even from the banks from American investors. What did you make of her reasoning for supporting the Emergencies Act?
I think this is a very tricky one. I think, if trade routes, and there are very few, are blocked and blockaded, that's a concern that allows a very small minority of people to have huge economic impact and cause economic harm. At the same time, I still find it surprising that these blockades, could not be dealt with existing police powers. And at the end of the day, the blockades were ended before the enactment of the Emergency Act. So I honestly I can't see actually what the justification that these blockades could be the justification for using that act.
Yeah, the timeline just not adding up there. But from Freeland's testimony, the situation sounded quite dire when it came to the U.S. pressuring Canada with the Ambassador Bridge. Was it enough, though, to invoke the act that impacts the entire country?
Well, first and foremost, the United States government obviously wants to advocate on behalf of its own people, of its businesses, and that's kind of their job. And Canada would have done the same way in the other direction. That is not rise to a threat to to Canada as a trading partner. All that it says is, you're creating a problem. Can you do something for our people? And at the end of the day, it is a concern for the auto industry, in particular in terms of the supply chain, and the fact that it can be blockaded is a problem. But you also have to, as a government, your obligation is to your own people first and foremost, right? And so now, if you have people that protest against you and they do this legitimately, there's a question of whether or not blockade is probably never legitimate, but people do protest against you. And as much as you dislike them and what they say, you still have to protect them. That's actually your job.
And Professor Park, what position did the Emergencies Act put banks in? From your knowledge, were they supportive of these measures? Well,
I think it is deeply problematic on many level. So let's start with the simple thing is we essentially, if these people involved were criminals and committed crimes, then they should be indicted and thrown into jail by the police. Now, essentially what happened is you use the financial sector to leverage and to convince people of actions that were in favor of the government. I find that very, very problematic because you essentially treat the families of these people as collateral damage. People live in houses, may not be able to pay their mortgages. I think there's a lot of follow-on effects that I find problematic. And I think you're basically imposing a penalty without a crime having been properly investigated and decided upon by judges. That is not how a democratic country should act.